Mr. Cliff Pyron Jr. was appointed Senior Manager of External Affairs of the North Carolina State Ports Authority in July 2016. Mr. Pyron actively participates in the development and the execution of the Strategic Integrated Communication Plan for the Ports Authority. His key responsibilities include local and statewide media relations, online and social media communications, local and statewide stakeholder advocacy programs, special events, and preparing external and internal communication products. Mr. Pyron is also the day-to-day contact for economic development opportunities for the North Carolina ports. His main tasks include developing and growing a close working partnership with the local, regional, and statewide economic development community all across North Carolina. He is responsible for implementing programs and services that retain and recruit globally dependent businesses. He also, prior to all of that, did several stints, and I told him I didn't know if this was going to be a positive or negative with this group. He worked for the media for a long time. He was a news reporter. So we're during the Q&A, he said he wanted all the political questions to go to him. He graduated from the University of North Carolina at Wilmington in 2009, and he received his Bachelor of Arts degree in Communication Studies with a minor in History.
Well, thank you very much for having me. We have a great story to tell at North Carolina Ports if you're not associated with us. A lot of positive energy with our ports of Wilmington and Morehead City, and the same moving forward. And a big reason why is CCX, which you all know well, and Norris is going to talk about. This is the biggest economic development project in the state right now, and maybe even in the history of our state. So really excited about that and how it ties into our Port of Wilmington. I'll touch on that a little bit today, but I don't want to step on Norris's toes too much, so I'll stick to some ports talk. Our North Carolina State Ports Authority, we have 4 port facilities that we own and operate. Many of you know our Port of Wilmington, kind of our crown jewel, our container port, which we own and operate about 284 acres. We also own and operate a port about 2 hours north of that, the Port of Morehead City, which is actually a little bit closer to where we're sitting here today. Big difference, it's significantly smaller. Also no containers move through our Port of Morehead City. And then we have inland terminals in Charlotte and in the Piedmont Triad in Greensboro, mainly dealing with containerized traffic. And a lot of those container trucks coming right down to our Port of Wilmington. We see about 500 to 900 trucks every single day at our Port of Wilmington. And the goal of all of our facilities is to enhance the economy of the state of North Carolina. A recent study, let's see if this works, yeah. A recent study done by ITRI, which is a part of NC State University, had some pretty impressive numbers to show. We impact over 76,000 jobs every single year at the North Carolina State Ports Authority. The majority of those right here in eastern North Carolina. Over $707 million in annual tax revenues, and then the big number here, $14 billion in annual economic contribution associated with goods moving through our ports. Over $12 billion of that down at our Port of Wilmington. And as we continue to invest in our facilities, see these new services come online, we expect these numbers to continue to rise. So our ports at a glance own and operate 2 ports and 2 inland facilities. Move just around 300,000 TEUs every single year. If you're not familiar with the acronym TEU, I'm going to use it a lot here today. That's a 20-foot equivalent unit box. That's kind of industry standard, how we count boxes or containers. And the more standard ones that you see are FEUs, 40-foot equivalent units on chassis of trucks up and down I-95 as well as I-40. And if you're not familiar with those, you're about to see a lot more of them here in the near future with CCX. More than 4 million tons on the bulk cargo side, employed directly, indirectly, over 2,000 people on any given day. We're talking about the truck drivers, public-private partnerships that we have, contractors on port, as well as our direct employees, and that number is closer to 250. And we generate earnings and cash flow to meet our annual operating requirements. What that means, we are an entity of the DOT. We kind of fall under the DOT umbrella, but we're not paid by tax revenues, or we're not paid by state taxpayer dollars, excuse me. We're all paid by ports revenues. So we're run very much like a business. And part of my job in external affairs is to actively promote, market, and sell our port services. We have a full suite of container services, over 1 million square feet in covered sprinklered storage warehouse space in Wilmington, over 1 million square feet in Morehead City as well, and a very experienced labor side, especially on the break bulk and project cargo side, which I'll talk about here today, that differentiates us from the port surrounding us. We're actually coming off 2 banner years in fiscal year 15 and fiscal year 16. We moved just under 300,000 Ts in fiscal year 15. We're up 18% year over year, making us one of the fastest growing ports on the United States East Coast. A number of reasons for this, and the biggest in my opinion is congestion. Any guesses the biggest port in the United States container volume wise? Mr. Edwards, you can't guess. West Coast, think West Coast. LA Long Beach, correct. So they had a lot of issues with their union in fiscal year 15. So a lot of that cargo got rerouted through the Panama Canal in 15, coming to the southeast and specifically to North Carolina ports. So we saw a spike in our volumes. Congestion on, losing my mic here, okay. Congestion on the East Coast, biggest port on the East Coast, guesses? Yeah, New York, New Jersey, I heard it somewhere. So New York, New Jersey, you see a lot of truck congestion. Trucks waiting hours to get in their facility. A big differentiator for us, there's absolutely no congestion at North Carolina ports. You're gonna hear me talk a lot about turn times here today. For trucks, time is money. They're trying to get in and out of ports as fast as possible. On an average, a single move coming into the Port of Wellington, an average of 18 minutes. So coming in, dropping off a container, then back out to the distribution center. On what we call a dual move, it's an average of 30 minutes. So there's coming in, dropping off a container, picking one up, then back out to the distribution center. Those are the fastest turn times on the United States East Coast, and certainly something that we tout to our customers at North Carolina ports. And in fiscal year 16, we had our most profitable year in authority history, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about what fiscal year 17 is looking like, and even into fiscal year 18 here in the future. So check out ncports.com. We have a beautiful video on our library telling you a little bit about the people behind North Carolina ports and what we do. But a little bit more about our Port of Wellington. Handle containers, bulk, break bulk, roll on, roll off. Those are the cargoes. Bulk is a loose cargo, like an animal grain. Actually the #1 import to our Port of Wellington right now. Break bulk is usually palletized. One of our big customers on that side, International Paper, based in Riegelwood, North Carolina. And then roll on, roll off is exactly what it sounds like. Ships will come in, drop a hatch onto a berth. We could roll on, roll off cars if North Carolina were to entice an automaker. Maybe at our nearby Kingsborough site, who knows? Navigation channel of 42 feet, accommodating very large vessels, these new vessels that are now transiting the Panama Canal. We have room for 600,000 TEUs on our facility at the Port of Wilmington. So I told you we moved just under 300,000 Ts. So we're at 50% capacity. We have a lot of room for growth within our current footprint at the Port of Wilmington. Our port employees perform our terminal operations. So those are our employees up in the cranes, not union workers, as you may see at ports around us. It really helps with our efficiencies and our productivity. We do about 45 net crane moves per hour in each of our blue post-Panamax cranes. If you've ever gone over the Cape Fear Memorial Bridge, looked over to our port and seen our big blue cranes, those can handle the big ships, and we're going to be adding new cranes here in the near future, which I'll talk about today as well. On-dock intermodal rail provided to us by CSX, and then over 200 what we call reefer plugs for refrigerated cargo. So pork, poultry, corn, sweet potatoes coming from eastern North Carolina. Using our reefer plugs at our Port of Wilmington. And a number of new services actually starting here next month in early May, an announcement with The Alliance. All the container companies are coming together and making alliances, and 2 of the 3 major alliances will be calling on North Carolina ports in May. And The Alliance is one of them. These are the names that you're going to see on the boxes. Yang Ming, K-Line, MOL, Hapag-Lloyd, now calling on the ports on May 8th. These are the biggest ships that North Carolina ports has seen on a week-in, week-out basis. About 8,500 TEUs on those ships every single week. So this is all trade going trans-Pacific to Asia. Another new announcement with Zim. This is giving us access to Southeast Asia and India subcontinent, places we've never had access to. What it all means is additional options for importers and exporters in North Carolina. And then the final announcement that we recently had, and this service is beginning early May as well with the 2M Alliance. It's called the TA2, a transatlantic service going to Felixstowe, Le Havre, and Antwerp. So very excited about that additional option as well for our importers and exporters. And here are the routes we currently have at North Carolina ports. The TA2 is our trans-Pacific route with the 2M Alliance. So if you see Maersk boxes or MSC boxes, Maersk is the biggest shipping line in the entire world, a Danish line. MSC is the second biggest line in the entire world. They come together and make that alliance. So it's great to have industry leaders through North Carolina ports. So that's our current Trans-Pacific service. And then we have two Latin and Central America services. Sealand, a subsidiary of Maersk. So we have the Atlantico and the SAE services that are in every single week. And then last but not least, our ICL service going from Wilmington, Antwerp, to Liverpool and then Chester, Pennsylvania. And that is our transatlantic service currently. Also, a little bit about our Port of Wilmington cold storage facility. We're very excited about this. A public-private partnership with USA Invesco, about 100,000 square feet, room for 11,000 palleted positions. It's additional capacity for pork, poultry, corn, sweet potatoes. Recently signed a little bit of insider information. Recently signed a big contract with Smithfield, so moving a lot of their pork from Tar Heel, North Carolina, coming in to our Port of Wilmington cold storage facility. It's a huge advantage for us. It's the only on-terminal cold storage facility on the United States East Coast, so it's something we're very excited about. Another new operation that has a little something to do with Eastern North Carolina, the Inviva wood pellet domes. There's two domes in Chesapeake, Virginia. They call those domes 1 and 2. The domes down in Wilmington are called domes 3 and 4. Strategically placed on our port next to the rail line. 60% of what they have, they're bringing in via rail from Sampson County. 40% via trucks. We see another 55 to 60 more trucks every single day associated with their activity as a public-private partnership with Inviva. Very excited about this. It began exports in December, and we've seen 3 or 4 ships already here this calendar year. And what they're doing is exporting wood pellets to the UK. They burn that instead of coal. It's considered a green renewable energy source. So that's a big commodity for us on the bulk side. I'd be remiss if I at least didn't mention our Port of Morehead City. I'm sure we've all probably been there, driven past it. US 70 bisecting our port there in Morehead City. Significantly smaller, about 128 acres, but it definitely has its niche. If you're driving up US 70 right now, looking into the right, you can see these massive big blue bridge girders. Maybe you've even seen them on the road. We're very proud of this project. It's for the Tappan Zee Bridge reconstruction project. Do I have any New Yorkers in the crowd familiar with the Tappan Zee Bridge? Okay, this is the most expensive bridge reconstruction project in the history of our country. These bridge girders are made and painted in Greensboro, North Carolina, put on trucks and trucked over to our Port of Morehead City, and then we place them on a flatbed barge and barge them up to New York. And that project's been going on for the last 2.5 years. It still has another 6 months, and it's specific to us at North Carolina Ports, so we're very, very proud of that project there in Morehead City. Over 1 million square feet covered sprinkler storage, railed served by Norfolk Southern there, navigation channel of 45 feet. A little bit more about our Morehead City Port. Total tonnage up 69% in fiscal year 16 compared to fiscal year 14, excluding PCS phosphate activity. A number of highlights there: Spirit Air fuel lodges, the bridge girders, which I mentioned, wind farm pieces going to Elizabeth City, North Carolina. So if you've seen the big tubes on the road, those are moving through our port in Morehead City. Significant challenges there as well. We were talking about it a little bit earlier, Mr. Howard. Some of the dredging issues, we actually see extreme amounts of shoaling at our Port of Morehead City. So last year we were as shallow as 30 feet when we had that authorized navigable depth of 45 feet. So we had some emergency dredging done. We're continuing to dredge so our customers do not have to light load there in Morehead City. The number 2 importer of naturalized rubber in Morehead City in the United States, behind New Orleans. So some of our advantages. Obviously the congestion, which I said, that lack of congestion at North Carolina ports, very efficient in our post-Panamax container cranes, making about 45 net crane moves per hour. I believe I used 18 and 30, which I'm going to continue to do for our turn times, even though this slide says 19 and 32. Best terminal rates on the United States East Coast, and very balanced trade, about 52% on the export side and 48% on the import side. North Carolina ports, we are closer than you think. As Mr. Howard mentioned, we are growing fast in the state. The 9th most populated state in the nation, continuing to rise, representing about 2 million TEUs. And our focus right now in North Carolina ports is reclaiming our home market. We want North Carolina businesses using North Carolina ports where and when it makes sense. So we move 300,000, 2 million TEUs, and we are going to get a bigger piece of that pie, hopefully with CCX in the future. One of the slides I like to talk about on the economic development side is developing our at-port model. So these are shovel-ready sites around the Port of Wilmington, the International Logistics Park, Mid-Atlantic Rail Park, great places for manufacturers, distribution centers, and a star next to the Pender Commerce Park, which is just 13 miles away from our Port of Wilmington, because there's an active ports customer there, Acme Smoked Fish, bringing in some of their salmon. They're actually using the new cold storage facility as well. And part of an extension of what we call the at-port model will be CCX. So we hope that's going to be a magnet for economic development for this region, and we're going to have direct access into that site. So we hope shovel-ready sites like Kingsborough there in the Tarboro area are going to hit and be part of our at-port model as well. So moving forward, what are we going to look like? Everybody always wants to know this. Our 5-year strategic plan is to double our container business from 300,000 Ts to 600,000 Ts, double the amount of business on the general terminal side from 4 million tons to 8 million tons. And how we're going to do that is we're expanding. It's called the Infrastructure Improvement Plan that you're going to hear me talk a lot about. We're expanding our Port of Wilmington, investing over $120 million into our facility over the next couple of years. And the first part of that plan was the Turning Basin Expansion Project. We actually widened the Turning Basin last year from 1,200 feet to 1,400 feet. A lot of these bigger ships that are now transiting the expanded Panama Canal, we can accommodate them by our depth in the Cape Fear River at 42 feet. We couldn't accommodate them by our width. The ships were longer than we thought. So we physically widened the Cape Fear River. We knocked out a T-head pier so they could make a 3-point turn. If you're familiar with a little town called Southport, our ships come up from Southport about 25 miles up the Cape Fear River, make a 3-point turn, and then call on our berths. So when we widened the Cape Fear River last summer, it allowed us to accommodate ships double the size that we're calling in June. And then the proof is kind of in the pudding. So here's some pictures of the biggest ships that have called on us at North Carolina ports this fiscal year. We're very proud of it. 8,500, Evergreen, Everladen, the biggest ship to ever call on North Carolina ports. And if you remember back to the early parts of my presentation, I told you about the new service with the Alliance called the EC2. So these 8,500s are going to be coming in every single week. And we can accommodate today a ship up to 10,000 TEUs. So we are what we like to call big ship ready. So if you ever hear those rumors out there that North Carolina ports can't handle the big ship, we'd appreciate it if you shot that down and be a champion for us at North Carolina ports. So this kind of puts it in perspective. The biggest ships that were calling on us as of June, about 4,500 TEUs. Now we're up to that third level, the 8,000 to 10,000 TEU ships. We consider those the workhorse class vessels of the Panama Canal Expansion Project. So a little bit more on our infrastructure investment plan. The Turning Basin is completed, what we call the Berth 8 replacement project. A berth is a fancy word for a dock. We're ripping up that dock and reinforcing it, a $35 million project, so we can accommodate 2 10,000 TEU ships at the same time. That's going to be done in mid-2018, and we're putting 2 new cranes on Berth 8, combined $27 million for those 2 new cranes. So very excited about their capabilities there in mid-2018. And then into the future, we are having a feasibility study done right now in Wilmington to see if we can potentially deepen further to be able to accommodate even bigger ships up the Cape Fear River. And then, of course, what we'll talk about here today is our intermodal rail capabilities. And when I talk about intermodal rail, that means containers on train. I guess all of you probably have a good understanding what CCX is. The analogy I like to use, think of it as a major airport. If you're flying out of Wilmington, you got to go to Charlotte or Atlanta to get anywhere, to burst into the network. Very similar on the rail side. We'll be able to bring in containers through our Port of Wilmington, get them into CCX every single day, and burst them into the network. So it broadens our reach into the western parts of the state and really to the western parts of the country. We'll be able to send boxes to Louisville, Chicago, and beyond, all because of CCX. So very excited about this economic development project. 90% of our customers said they wanted this intermodal service, and CSX's investment in the state is bringing it to us. And as I said, we think it's going to be a magnet for economic development moving forward. And the first part of this for us is direct rail access into Charlotte. It's called the Queen City Express, starting here this summer. A double stack train going into Charlotte every single week. So helping us to reclaim our market, as I touched on earlier, there in the Charlotte region. Here's the CSX line going from point A to point B. That's the Queen City Express. And then there in the Lumberton area is the Pembroke connector there. That's going to take us up to CCX when it's done in 2019. So point A to point C. So just kind of in summary, doubling our container business, our goal to 600,000 Ts, doubling the business of our general cargo, and how we're going to do that is that infrastructure improvement plan. And the timing is perfect. The Panama Canal expansion project, a lot of congestion at North America ports. We're starting to see a migration of cargoes to the southeast and specifically to us at North Carolina ports. So we like to say it's time to reclaim North Carolina's market and drive projects to our state. And this is an example of all the customers that currently use our ports in Wilmington and Morehead City. As we continue to invest, as CCX comes online, we hope to add to this here in the near future.